pass by the community of Cottage Grove today without even realizing it. Only a brick church and a cemetery remain of what was one of the early communities of Bossier Parish. Cottage Grove has always been small, with its central area comprised of a school, a church, and the office of Dr. James S. Milling. The towns of Collinsburg, Benton, and Rocky Mount surrounded Cottage Grove, so residents traveled to those areas for postal service and commercial shops. Cottage Grove Seminary was one of the earliest schools in Bossier Parish. The Caddo Gazette announced the opening of the Cottage Grove Male and Female Seminary on February 3, 1855. This institution is handsomely located 5 miles south of Collinsburg in a region of high and healthy country. It was next to the cemetery, but today nothing remains of the structure. It was a large school building with 3 classrooms. For a short time it served as a female-only seminary, but young men soon joined the school as well. Louisa M. Ricks served as principal. Miss Ricks possesses a happy tact to impart knowledge and at the same time win the affection and confidence of her pupils. Academic pursuits, along with refined arts, comprise the curriculum at the seminary. Students could take music classes for piano, harp, or guitar, learn painting and embroidery, French, Latin, and vocal music. The school was in existence into the 1880s, but we have no known photographs of the seminary. Dr. Milling's home, which was across from the seminary, does survive in photographs. His home did include his medical office. When Bossier Parish was looking for a new courthouse site, Cottage Grove vied to receive the parish seat. Dr. Milling submitted a list of the favorable conditions that Cottage Grove offered for the courthouse, including health and an abundance of good water, pine timber and high hills on 3 sides, admitting the summer breeze, a thickly settled community with the necessary surroundings of a village, such as a church, academy, sawmills, and blacksmith shops, and Cottage Grove was within 3 miles of one of the best landings on the Red River. Unfortunately for Cottage Grove, it was not meant to be, and Benton was the winner of the parish seat and received the new courthouse. In 1879, Cottage Grove's Presbyterian Church was constructed. Prior to the opening of the church, the congregation met within the school building. Reverend Alexander Robinson Banks wrote that the new church is erected alongside of the old and large graveyard, about a half-mile from the site of Wright's Chapel, and about the same distance from the Cottage Grove Academy. The Presbyterian Church of Shreveport presented Cottage Grove with a fine walnut pulpit. A Morocco or goatskin-bound Bible was given by the Adger family, and a wood heater was purchased to keep the church warm during cool winter months. Reverend Banks spearheaded the construction of the new church building. June 1880 saw the dedication of the church, and it was named the Banks Chapel to honor Reverend Banks. He remained its pastor until his poor health caused him to step away in 1887. On August 17, 1928, the wooden Banks Chapel caught fire and was completely destroyed. Reports of the fire indicate that the old Bible and other valuable church property burned. Reverend W.A. Ziegler, with support from the Cottage Grove community, constructed a new brick building in the same location. The new church was named Cottage Grove Memorial Presbyterian Church. Church member Kitty Coyle wrote of the many events held at the church. Over the years, many rituals and ceremonies were held here, the homecomings and dinners on the grounds every Mother's Day, the Holy Week meditations and Easter sunrises, the summer revivals and ice cream suppers, the fall retreats, the Christmas Eve candlelight services. And though they never speak of such things, the people of Cottage Grove have deep feelings about worshiping in the place where their ancestors are buried. You can see it in the reverence in which they tend the cemetery and grounds, in their determination to preserve burial spots for their kin and themselves, and in the way they stare at the church when the light falls across it in a certain way. Cottage Grove Cemetery, while directly next to the church, is a secular graveyard. The earliest graves are from 1842 and are atop a small rise on the property. Later burials extended to the areas around this small hilltop. The cemetery found a friend in 1997 when Hunter Graham embarked on a 5-month cleanup project. During this time, while Graham was in his 80s, he cleaned more than 270 monuments in the cemetery. Graham's parents are buried in the cemetery, and during a research trip he realized that moss and fungus had blackened and obscured the ornate designs and lettering on a lot of the monuments. He also took the extra step of completing a brand new inventory of the entire cemetery, creating a 17-page document including each gravestone.
In one corner of the cemetery is a fenced-off memorial to the Pickett family. The graveyard's fence, of very stylized ironwork, is set in white marble imported from Italy. The enclosed land is paved with stone blocks broken only by protruding vegetation and the family's 8 gravestones. The matriarch of the family was Paulina de Graffenried Pickett, a South Carolinian who was born in October of 1817 and passed away in Shreveport in 1899. Her daughter Sally Pickett Cummings is also buried in the area, and some legends have grown up around her story. She was born in July of 1837 and died of cholera in June of 1855, shortly after her marriage. The massive marker for her grave is carved with many rows of fine script.
Cottage Grove Cemetery in Bossier Parish is a reminder, a vestige really of a Victorian era in Bossier Parish, but also a great reminder to us of the community that settled that part of Bossier Parish, because you can walk among the stones that are there and you know that from the family names you can read inscribed and from the ornate, very loving attention that was given to burial rituals there, you know that these were some of the wealthier families that settled that area of Bossier Parish. Cemetery iconography is always interesting. I mean, even to the modern mind, it's interesting. But if you look at particularly the 19th century, the Victorian era, there's some interesting, not just iconography, but also burial practices that are rumored to be indicated in Cottage Grove. For instance, Sally Cummings, who was not even 18 years old yet when she died in 1855, is purported to be buried in a glass coffin. And that is, believe it or not, that's a very typical Victorian burial practice. Seems to have existed between about 1830s and into really the late Victorian period of the 1880s, that to bury people in, at least with a glass window, so that presumably in the transport of their body to the cemetery and up to and including the burial of their body in either a crypt or in a grave below the ground, there was one last opportunity to see if that person was actually deceased. And the other sort of related practice of the Victorians seems to have been to even install a bell on the inside of a coffin, so that if someone woke up, there would be a warning. And although it seems very odd to us today, when you consider the fact that the state of medicine was such that to pronounce someone dead would require the presence of an actual medical doctor, and when there are many illnesses that might in the terminal phase lead to comas or deep sleeps, it probably wasn't that uncommon. I know that in Shreveport there is at least one story of someone being transported into the city cemetery who woke up in the hearse on the way to the cemetery. So those things are documented in the history. But I encourage everyone to take a stroll through Cottage Grove Cemetery. It's a great reminder of the history of the parish, some of the families that were there. The story, literally, of the entire community can be told in the names and the dates that are inscribed in the marble and the granite. So I encourage you to go take a look.